Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the chilling story of the Purani Haveli. It's a tale that kicks off with a ghost, but ends up revealing a really dark secret and ultimately a powerful lesson about healing and community. All right, so let's set the scene. In this gorgeous little village called Pampur, there's this old mansion, the Purani Haveli. It's majestic, ancient, but also completely terrifying. For years, the villagers wouldn't even walk past it, always whispering stories about what or, who was living inside. So, what was the source of all this fear? Well, it all boiled down to one rumor that the Haveli was haunted by this strange, reclusive old woman. Was she a ghost or just a woman who'd lost her mind? Nobody knew for sure, and honestly, nobody was brave enough to find out. She was just this local legend. But then, one night, that legend became all too real. Two men, Swami and Ramu, got caught in this insane hailstorm and decided to take shelter inside the Haveli. Bad idea. Inside, they saw her, an old woman with this wild white hair, just muttering to herself in a dark corner. The sight alone sent them running right back out into the storm. They were totally convinced the stories were true. The whole vibe of the village gets completely flipped when four outsiders show up. We've got a young couple, Rajiv and Ria, and two other guys, Raman and Prem. And they make this huge claim that the Purani Haveli is their ancestral property, and they're here to sell it. Right away, you can see this massive clash of worlds. On one hand, you have the villagers who are genuinely terrified and trying to warn these newcomers. And on the other hand, you've got Rajiv and his crew who are just laughing it all off as silly superstitions. In fact, Ria's already planning to take pictures for her Instagram, treating the whole thing like some quaint little folktale. So, they go inside the mansion and they finally come face to face with the old woman. But she isn't some terrifying ghost. Instead, she says something they absolutely cannot resist. She tells them she's guarding a treasure hidden somewhere inside the Haveli's walls. And boom, just like that, with that one word, treasure, everything changes. The plan to sell the property, totally gone. It's replaced by this all-consuming greed. The group becomes obsessed. They have to find this fortune. And they even manage to talk some of the villagers into helping them by promising a piece of the action. They spend hours, tearing the mansion apart, and they find absolutely nothing. Just as they're about to give up, one of the villagers spots a collapsed part of the roof. And underneath all that rubble, they find a loose stone, which reveals a hidden staircase leading straight down into the darkness. So the whole group heads down into this damp, musty cellar. You can just imagine it, their phone flashlights cutting through the dark, lighting up all the cobwebs and dust. And then, over in a corner, they see it, a heavy, old iron chest. This has to be it, right? The excitement is just electric as they haul it back upstairs. As they drag the chest out into the light, the old woman starts dancing. She's just filled with joy, chanting, "My treasure, my treasure." Everyone's gathered around, hearts pounding. They're picturing gold coins, priceless jewels. Basically the answer to all of their problems. But when they finally manage to break the lock and lift the heavy lid, a wave of pure horror just washes over the room. There are no jewels, there's no gold. Inside the chest are the tiny, skeletal remains of a child. The treasure was a grave. That discovery just shatters something in the old woman. We learn her name is Gauri, and seeing those remains seems to pull her back from whatever madness she was in. As she starts to weep, all those years of grief just come pouring out, and she finally tells them her story. Gauri's story is it's a horrifying chain reaction. She used to live in this very mansion with a husband who was obsessed with having a son. When she gave birth to a girl, he was disgusted. He went to a mystic who told him to sacrifice his own infant daughter. When Gauri found out what he'd done, her grief just turned into this pure, white-hot rage, and she killed him. The trauma of it all completely broke her mind. She put her daughter's body in that chest and started calling it her treasure, because it was the only thing of value she had left. The newcomers are listening to all this, just stunned, but their shock really quickly turns into anger. Not at the tragedy, oh no. They're angry because they've been cheated out of a fortune. Rajiv actually yells, "This is your treasure? Bones and rotting memories?" And he kicks the chest. And that one act of disrespect just sends Gauri into a protective fury. So as the group tries to grab her, they suddenly realize that Gauri has spent all her years alone, turning the Haveli into a fortress.
Rajiv falls into a hidden pit. Ria runs into a room that locks behind her and is suddenly swarming with rats. Prem slips on a hallway floor that's been deliberately slicked with oil. It turns out her madness had a purpose. It was all about protecting her treasure. Rajiv manages to call the police, claiming some mad woman is attacking them. But when the officers show up, Gauri has this moment of complete clarity. As the newcomers are claiming ownership, she just calmly asks, "Where are your papers? What proof do you have?" And that one question just stops them dead in their tracks, because they have nothing. Their whole story falls apart, and they confess they're just frauds who are planning to illegally seize the property. The police arrest them right there on the spot.
So, with the frauds arrested and Gauri's heartbreaking story finally out in the open, the villagers of Punpur are left to deal with the Haveli's dark past. The ghost they'd all feared for so long was actually a grieving mother, and the curse was just the memory of an awful crime. But what happens next is easily the most powerful part of this whole story. Instead of just abandoning the Haveli or tearing it down, the community chooses compassion. They all come together to perform the final rites for Gauri's unnamed daughter, giving this little girl the dignity in death that she was denied in life. Gauri, who's now getting professional help, is allowed to attend, and in that moment of shared grief, she finally gets some release from decades of pain. And this all leads to the story's beautiful conclusion. The villagers don't tear the mansion down. They transform it. The Purani Haveli, once this symbol of absolute fear, is turned into a school for girls. And on the front gate, they hang a plaque that says, Gauri Kanya Vidyala, the Gauri Girls' School, a beautiful tribute born from a mother's tragic love. You know, this story really forces us to ask a pretty deep question. It shows how easily greed can blind us, but it also shows how compassion can heal even the deepest, oldest wounds. It's an amazing reminder that behind pretty much every ghost story, there's a human tragedy. And sometimes the only way to banish a curse is with understanding, with empathy, and with the courage to build something new right on top of the old ruins.